Mitch reconnected with Maury after 18 years out of high school. And he reconnected when Maury was in the last 6 months of his life, and he was dying from ALS back then. And it's a true story. This happened 24 years ago. I was thinking of Rajesh. And thank God Rajesh is not dying, but he does have Parkinson's. And when I met him, he went through a very hard time, and he still goes through a hard time every single day.
I think it demonstrates how important is the role of a mentor. Hello and welcome to the Indian Community Podcast. I'm your host Amit Gupta along with my friend and co-host Rahul Mehra. Today we are joined by Saundarya Balasubramani, founder and CEO of Unshackled. She's a remarkable individual whose journey from India to the US is a tale of resilience, passion and transformation. After completing her masters at Columbia, Saundarya joined Salesforce as a product manager, only to realize corporate life was not her calling. Embracing her true passion, she ventured into the world of publishing and community building, supporting talented immigrants in obtaining talent visas and, most importantly, freedom. Saundarya's journey is not just about her transition from a corporate role to becoming a solopreneur. It's a story of navigating the complex visa system, overcoming setbacks, and ultimately obtaining the O1 Extraordinary Visa. As an author, community leader, LinkedIn top voice, and now angel investor, Saundarya is here to share her insights, experiences, and how she's helping immigrants unshackle their potential. So, welcome to the Indian Community Podcast, Saundarya.
Such a great intro, and what a great ending to that intro. I love how you're using the word unshackled. Thanks so much for having me.
It was a beautiful name for a book because when I first came across your book, I was like, wow, this means so much, right? And freedom is something that we all cherish. And unfortunately, some of us don't have that in spite of our countries being free. And none of us live in captivity, but somehow circumstances have made us captive. And I love the way you've positioned that book. And I think there's a lot of thought behind picking up a name. And that was one of them. So I had to use that once again.
Thanks so much. And I think I keep thinking back to the moment when I thought of the name, and I cannot place the exact moment because it feels like I almost always knew that if I ever write a book on immigration, the name's going to be Unshackled. And it only strengthened the day I quit my job at Salesforce, which was 2 years and 3 months ago at this point, or 4 months ago. And that day after I got the email from my lawyer telling me that you can now go quit because your H-1B transfer got approved, when we can get into that if you want. Um, I just felt pure catharsis and freedom in that moment. So unshackled was the word that came to mind.
Yes, I had a similar experience, when I got my permanent residency, and I was like, okay, today I feel truly free. And I can relate with what you would have gone through at that time. So,
Thank you.
that- so Sundara, let's start from something very interesting that I observed on the internet when we were doing our research about you, which was back in the day, you have been called Pooja, or you used to call yourself as Pooja. So, what's the story behind Saundarya and Pooja? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, it would be so sad if I just called myself Pooja for no reason. But actually, people still call me Pooja, and I think will continue to call me for the rest of my life. And that's because when I was born, my official name was Saundarya, which
Okay.
my dad kept after seeing the charts of what is the right name for me. At the same time, though, my brother, who was 5.5 years older than me, so he was 5.5 years old at that
Mhm.
point, he kept the name Pooja. And
Okay.
recently, actually, I asked him a few months ago, do you know why you did that back then? And he said, I think it's because I had a crush on someone called Pooja in my classroom. Maybe I liked the name, so I kept it for you. But that's the origin of that. And I just, almost everyone calls me Pooja. In fact, except for teachers and professors who had to call me Saundarya since it was the official name,
Right.
very few people call me Saundarya.
Okay, that's interesting. So is that back home in India, there, or it's even here in the US? People call you Pooja.
Here, everywhere actually. And here I also introduce myself as Pooja because it's just easier to say for Americans and people who are not from India than Soundarya. Because for Soundarya, I would always have a follow-up question that says, "Oh, say that again." So
What
it's
does
just
that mean? You know,
yeah, Sundarya, Sandy, what is that?
no, that's cool. That's interesting. So your brother gave you that name, and it has stuck to him. So did he finally meet Pooja or not?
Given that Pooja is one of the most common names in India, I'm
Yeah.
sure he somebody named that.
And he was 5.5 years old, so I'm sure he doesn't even remember who that Pooja was. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So, Sundarya, where do you belong to in India?
I come from a very small suburb called Patravakkam. It's north of
Mhm.
Chennai. So it's about 15 kilometers north. I grew up there, spent 13 years before moving to mainland Chennai for high school because my brother had to go to college at that point.
So, is Pooja a very common name down there in South India also?
Actually, I've heard it's more common up north. Soundarya is
Mhm.
quite common in the southern part of India.
Correct.
Right.
That's cool. So, Saundarya, so I think for the sake of this episode, we're going to call you Saundarya
No.
because a lot of our listeners and viewers know you as Saundarya Balasubramani,
Yeah.
and we'll stick to that. So, no more puja
Right.
questions on this episode. Saundarya, first question is so many times your career, you're defined by what you study at school or at university. And now, here I look at you, you're a gold medalist in chemical engineering. You've also been a successful author, writing on a very complex subjects such as immigration. And then now you're building a community, and you're also an angel investor. So how do people react to you when you say that you've done all of these things? And do people call you fickle minded? Like, when I would tell people that I've done all these different things, people would say that's very fickle minded. You're not focusing on one. And what do you think? Is that a quality, or is that you know something that you repent?
Excellent question. Like I wish everyone asked, me this question because it's true. I've shifted careers a few times now, from chemical engineering to product management to writing to now, I guess, entrepreneurship. Although I feel like I'm just a newbie here.
Mhm.
Um, I used to think it was a weakness. And obviously, yes, a lot of people have told me that you're unfocused. Are you sure you want to do this? Don't you
Correct.
want to stick to this for another few years to see where it goes? Um, and obviously, I mean, these voices get into your mind, right? Like, because I was telling this to one of my best friends recently that you are what you hear. And when you keep hearing from other people that you're unfocused, you're not going deep enough in one area, it starts to become your own inner monologue, wherein
Correct.
you start to tell yourself that, why are you so unfocused? Why can't you just stick to one field? Um, and I have proof of this because if I go back to my journal entries from 2019, 2020, you get a lot of this in there. And I'm really glad I journaled and I still journal. It's one of my meta skills that I want to keep up. Um, at some point, though, somewhere in the last, especially the last 1.5 years, I realized that it's not a weakness and it's actually a brilliant strength because very few people have the ability to switch careers and make progress really fast in that career in a very short period of time. Um, and, without sounding braggy, I just felt like compared to where I was a few years ago, where I used to abuse myself mentally for not sticking to one field. I've come a long way in kind of embracing this as I'm really happy that I can do this. Because polymath is one of the words that I love in the English language for many reasons. But I realized that a while ago, I realized I aspire to become a polymath in my life where I want to try as many careers as possible. Um, and I do realize one thing is that I love writing books and I'm going to keep writing for the rest of my life. Like that's something that'll keep happening. But I'm not going to be a traditional author in the sense of I know people who like they wake up and they spend 8 to 10 hours writing, and that's what they do primarily.
Right.
And it's incredible that they can do that. I realize though that I actually like alternating between periods of quiet writing where I don't talk to anyone and I just go off into my own world for a while. And then there is period of creating something out of that book, building a community or building a company out of that. Um, just doing something with the book that I written in a different way. For example, with Unshackle, we're doing a book tour, which we'll talk about later on. But with the next book, I really want to do a documentary. It's something I've never done before, and I want to try it. Um, and yeah, I think you are what you hear, and if you're around the wrong people, you can kind of it's a self fulfilling prophecy where people tell you that, you tell yourself that, and you become that.
Correct.
And I think it's important to be around people who are more of a champion for you, who who are not what's the word for it? Echo chambers. I'm not
Right.
saying be around echo chambers, but rather be around people who can tell you the truth, but not um, condemn you for it or not look down upon you for what you want to do. So I think I found those people in the last 2 years, especially.
Yeah, that is true. Very true. In fact, I think personally, I feel it is okay to change your mind because that's how you pivot, right? And you're able to change your trajectory based on all that collective experience that you build. And you just don't know when, what experience kind of helps you, right? I'm sure everything that you've done, you've studied, you've been able to bring those skills over. And today you're complete because of this, right? And that's what is going to be most important. So
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that's true. It's certainly a better story to tell yourself. I don't know if I'm ever going to use the chemical engineering concepts. I don't even remember them anymore from college. Um, but I think for me, what I will take away from college is I was active in an extracurricular sense. I was part of many clubs in both my
correct.
undergrad and grad school. And so there I learned to work with people and get things done. Like whatever it takes, be scrappy and get things done. And that I think has helped me a lot.
Correct. And it's not just the subject that you're learning, right? It is how you learn. And that is also something which is very important. So it doesn't matter what you learned, but I think what is more important is how you were learning things. And that is a skill that you built. And now, be it a new topic, be it immigration or this new documentary that you're going to be planning for, that reminds me, have you thought of a subject for the documentary?
Yes, it's the same subject as the book. It's
Oh,
kind of an corollary to the book itself. So book plus documentary on the same topic, which yeah, we can talk now or we can talk later.
now, while we're on that subject, so why not? What is that documentary going to be about?
Um, okay, it's a very nebulous idea, but the book is something that I thought of writing 2.5 years ago. So I met someone named Rajesh Sethi on July 7th, 2021. So it's been 2 years and 8 months actually. I believe you know him,
I do.
right? So Rajesh changed my life in every way possible. Um, it's like, you know how there is BC and AC, like before Christ, after Christ? In my own life, I think of it as BR and AR, because right now I obviously cannot imagine like a life without knowing Rajesh. And we've talked every day for the last 2 years and 6 months. Like pretty much from the first few weeks since we met, we began talking every single day. And and it's insane because we've spoken for probably thousands of hours, but it is still the highlight of my day getting to talk to him. He is a 20x author, serial entrepreneur, mentor to many startups, comedian, many things. He's a genius. And after the time I met Rajesh, I read a book called Tuesdays with Mori. I don't know if you know the book.
I do not.
Okay. So this is a beautiful slice of life book on a person called Mori who is a professor of this person called Mitch who wrote the book. He's the author of the book. So Mitch reconnected with Mori after 18 years out of high school. And he reconnected when Mori was in the last 6 months of his life, and he was dying from ALS back then. And it's a true story. This happened 24 years ago. And so every Tuesday, Mitch would go meet Mori for just to talk about life and different aspects of what makes a good life from the perspective of someone who is actually dying. And that's it. That's the entire book. It's a book of conversations between two people. So that book really touched me much more than I expected, because the entire time I was reading it, I was thinking of Rajesh. And thank God Rajesh is not dying, but he does have Parkinson's. And when I met him, he went through a very hard time, and he still goes through a hard time every single day. But nobody who meets him would even have a slight clue that he has Parkinson's, because he just lives his life with so much joy, and he's like an infectious joy creating machine if you're around him. So anyways, I want the next book to be about like an infection. See if I can translate some of that for the rest of the world as well in the form of a conversation.
Yeah, that is very noble, Saundarya. And I was very glad when I saw you throw a flash party for his birthday.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was very cool. And I think it demonstrates how important is the role of a mentor, right? And I think if you so the thing about mentors is there's a mentor and a mentee, right? And both of them have to be synced in such a way that the knowledge that gets transferred multiplies multifold, right? So it is, I think that's what you're kind of witnessing there. And I'm very glad that you got an opportunity to spend so much time with Rajesh. And yeah, he's an inspiration for everybody, right? And we'll put a link to his TEDx speech, which was one of my favorites, which I kind of go back and listen to that on days when I feel low, right?
Oh,
So that
pleased to hear that.
that
Yeah.
yes, that is very cool.
So, Saundarya, coming to your, when this is my first question. So, we read your, Amit was talking about your book, Shackled a lot. So, what motivated you to write this book? And what do you expect the readers to take away?
Oh, that's a great question. The second one. What motivated me, in short, personal experience with immigration. Um, I I began doing like a research project into high skilled immigration for myself around early 2021. So this was after I published my first book, Admitted, and I just knew that this is it. Like, I love writing books. I want to be an author full time, and I want to be a solopreneur full time. I'm very clear of this. I don't know what I'm going to write about, but I want to do this. And so I decided to figure out how can I quit my job and still be in the US and be a solo founder. And that's what got me into reading about immigration, because you can't just quit your job because you want to here. And I spent a year reading it about it for myself, not for anybody else really. But having spent like now 10, 11 years writing to both learn and to teach other people, it was only natural that I would want to write about immigration because I'd spent so much time teaching myself. Um, I actually thought it'd be a very short book just on O1 visa, to be very honest. Like in the early days, I would say, right after I quit my job, when I filed the O1 for the first time and got it denied eventually, I just wanted to write a book on the O1 because I felt like it's a great visa for a lot of founders and non founders. But then I got the denial notice in May 2022. It was a very hard day for me. Eventually, I moved on from it. And the thing is, it was also hard because I was waiting for the O1 approval to come through to write this book on immigration. And it didn't come through. So I started feeling if I didn't have the O1, who's going to listen to me? Like, I have no authority to talk about this subject. Why should anyone listen to me right now?
Mhm.
Um, and so, well, I think I kind of resolved that in two ways. One is I actually went out and I was like, I want to find a lawyer who can work on this with me,
Mhm.
who can like proofread the entire book, help make sure that it upholds to the highest legal standard. And secondly, I was like, look, even if I don't have the O1, I've done more research than pretty much most people out there on this topic in the last year and a half. So I think it's still worth writing. Um, and so I asked Samir if he's willing to write this book with me. At first, he said no. And I asked him again after a month, and then he said yes. And then we went public, and on August 9th, 2022, we made a post on LinkedIn announcing the news around the book. And after that, there was a lot of momentum and it took off. So that's the motivation, to answer that question. Um, you also asked me, what do you want people to take away from this? Wow. I'm thinking of many responses, but I don't think that's a good response. What's one thing I want people to take away? I want people to care about immigration for their own lives. Because I think for a lot of people, it's an afterthought. You don't really think about it until you have to think about it. Like until you get laid off, you're not really thinking about H1Bs. Or until your name doesn't get picked in the lottery, you're not thinking about it.
Right.
But I think the immigration rules and regulations as it is today, they're not really in favor of high skilled immigrants. The laws haven't changed in 34 years in any significant way. There are some minor improvements that keep happening. So I do think people need to be more proactive about figuring out, okay, here are the reality of like what the situation is. Here is my goal. Now, how can I make this happen within the system that I'm in? And so I think Unshackled is kind of a response to that. Look, the situation is not great, but you can actually do a lot within the current system. And we're going to show you exactly how you can do that. So, yeah, that's
So,
the.
Good.
staying on that subject, Sundar, and it is also the H1B season these days, right? So the lottery is going to be opening up. Um, we know that today in America, there's a lot of Indian immigrants on that H1B visa already, and they're all struggling because of the green card backlog, right? So it's not easy to be on that backlog and waiting for 100 and 125 just to get that green card application. A lot of them will never actually receive it, right? Um, and you speak a lot about this subject, and I think what I wanted to do is ask you a very binary question. Can somebody on an H1B visa transfer to an O1 visa? Is there a way for somebody to actually go from an H1B to an O1? Is that even possible? Because I have a lot of friends who are on an H1B, and they express their plight when we meet in private, and they say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I'm going to go back once the kids grow up and all of that stuff. But I tell them that an O1 visa is a potential for you, and most of them don't even know that's possible, or even if it's possible. So I'm not an expert on this subject, so I'm going to ask you. You're the expert on this subject. So can somebody on an H1B visa transfer to an O1 visa?
I think you're really asking, can someone on H1B transfer to an EB1? Because the O1 is just a temporary work visa.
Oh,
It's
yes, sorry,
not
an
a-
EB1. That's right. I'm my mistake.
No worries. Yes, of course. Thousands of people transfer every single year from an H1B to an EB1. So if the answer is it legally possible, then absolutely yes.
Mhm.
But if you're asking, can just anyone transfer from an H1B to an EB1, then absolutely not. Because the EB1, it is an extraordinary ability green card.
Correct.
It is meant for people who are at the top of their fields, who have contributed significantly to their field. Um, but I think what happens is people hear about EB1, they get very excited. They're like, oh, there is actually a green card pathway that doesn't require me to be, chained for 100 years. That's
Correct.
great. And then they go read the requirements
Mm.
and they see stuff like international or nationally acclaimed awards,
Correct.
uh, high salary in your domain, judging the work of your peers, and so on. And they feel incredibly demotivated because they feel like, how will I ever get this visa.
Correct.
Um, and I think that's actually the point where people should kind of, I hope at least the people listening to this take a step back and think, yeah, I mean, it is hard because it's meant to be hard, but it is absolutely possible if I strategically plan out the next several years that way. Because, I would think that anyone who's a hardworking citizen here, they want to do well. They want to do good for their community. And now it's a question of, can you understand the requirements of the EB1A enough
Mhm.
to start working on things that will eventually like contribute to all of the pillars under the EB1? I call them the pillars, the criteria. So start judging competitions in your area more. Start peer reviewing journal articles in your field. If there's any podcast that's out there, go get yourself on the podcast and start speaking. So I think there are these like very actionable, doable things that you can do. And it may not happen in a few months if you're just starting out.
Right.
If you don't have anything else to like kind of hinge upon. But I think if you understand the requirements really well, you'll start to see that actually it's doable. um, I just need to put in the time and effort required for that.
That's excellent. So, yeah, it's not that you need a Nobel Prize or an Oscar to qualify, right? So, there are strategies that you adopt, and that should help you qualify. And is that what you do at your community, Unshackled? Is that how you guide, show them the path towards that transition?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I'd like to think of the Unshackled.club, like Unshackled community, as more of a if this was an offline community, let's say, it would be, this huge building where one part of the building is a discussion forum. You walk in there, you can sit down and talk to other people like yourself who are in
Right.
your field, kind of trying to get this visa. And you go to the other part of the building and you'll walk into like a library of resources of master classes that we've had with recipients of these visas,
Right.
of list of awards you can apply to, get yourself nominated to, a list of competitions you can judge, and so on. And then there is another part of the building where you get to talk to experts, such as actual like lawyers who can evaluate your profile, and past recipients of these visas who can talk to you and tell you, this is how I got the visa. So
Mm.
that's what the community does. It's like this one space where we got all these resources and people and experts together. And now you walk in, you need to make use of it. You need to actually walk to these different parts of the building and make use of it.
And what is the impact you've seen so far through that community? Any life changing stories that you're very proud of?
Yeah, I mean, in the last 6, 7 months, we've seen 10 people get the talent visas from
Oh,
within the community. And they all have different stories. Like one person actually told me that it's not really the community, but one person got the O1A recently, and he mentioned he didn't get picked in the H1B lottery 3 times in a row. And then he went to his company and said, I need some option. What about the O1? And
mhm.
the company said, do you have publications? He said no. And the computer company said, okay, then we can't file the O1 for you. Um, and then he once again didn't get picked in the H1B lottery a fourth time. And at that point, apparently he'd come across the O1 chapter from, our book Unshackled.
Mhm.
And reading that gave him the hope that actually I can get the O1. And he spent 6 months like rigorously building his profile towards getting it and finally got the O1. So I
That
think like all it required was that perspective shift, that from going from there is no way I can do this to maybe I have a shot. I just need to put some effort. Yeah.
so there's a north star that they're all trying to achieve, and what you're trying to do there is give them these bite-sized milestones that they can start aiming towards, and then slowly, gradually building their profile, which helps them qualify better.
Yeah, I actually think that's a very different and nice way of putting it. A North Star and bite-sized nuggets. Um, yeah, I think, some people, I don't think the community is a substitute for hard work. And that's something I'm very clear on generally. Because
Correct.
some people come and ask, oh, is this like a mentorship program where I just have to follow the steps? And
Right.
I don't think there's any set steps. We've put all these together for you, but you still have to do the hard work because these are talent visas. So,
That is true. No, I think unless there is talent, you just cannot get it, right? It's just that talent also needs direction. That talent needs motivation. So I think what you're doing with that community is just that, right? Especially when that talent is down and tired and they're out of motivation, they feel that this is not possible. When they speak to other peers and tell them it is possible, and I think that encouragement also helps tremendously, because I know a lot of people who can go run a 10K just because they got motivated enough, right? Otherwise they would barely walk 100 steps. It is.
absolutely. Just to give a quick analogy on that, because you said the 10K thing. 2 days ago, I'm doing a challenge with myself, wherein this for 30 days I wanted to do a 5K every single day, or really more like a 6 or 7K, because that's the distance I run.
Okay.
Um, and 2 days ago, I woke up and it was raining. It was so cold. It was very dark in the morning, and I had a lot of reasons to not do it. But for whatever reason, I woke up with this sense of I have to run today. And I ended up running my best time despite it being raining. Like, it was pouring down. I was drenched by the time I was done. I was cold and numb and my feet were soggy. But all it took was just this one notion of waking up and feeling like I can do this. And yeah, I think we all feel this way, right? Like, there are certain days when you wake up and you just feel invincible. You feel like I can do anything today. So I think with these visas, you just need one such day, like wake up and feel like I can do this. So yeah.
Is it so easy? I mean, the way you described it, that one day we were talking about gaining talent, right?
Oh,
And
I didn't mean getting talent. I think I meant starting the process towards getting to
starting.
talent visa. That's all.
Cool. So, Sandhya, it's very inspiring to see your clarity of thought and focus towards your multifaceted career, I would say. And actually, there are multiple things that you could do. So, how did you decide what went on in your mind?
How did I decide if I
Start-
want to write books or
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's interesting. The question you just asked me unlocked a different thought in my head, because I realized I have been writing since I was 16. So I'm 27 now, and I've been writing for 11 years. Um, it feels like it's a part of me. It's something that I do every single day in different forms. And so writing books, it because I'd spent so many years writing in undergrad and grad school, it was almost inevitable that I would write a book someday. And one thing though is I have 2 published books, but I have 4 unpublished books. Things that I started and then eventually never finished. And one of them is actually a fiction novel. So I think in terms of why I chose to write, probably thanks to my undergrad clubs. I joined a bunch of content writing clubs back then, and
Mhm.
they inspired me to keep going. And also feedback. I think I know there's people who can keep doing something even if nobody around them gives them positive reinforcement. They just do it because they inherently feel like I'm meant to do this. I don't think I'm one of those. I think with writing, I fortunately got feedback from people on stuff I published in those years. So as you get feedback on, let's say you publish an article, I still remember one of the first articles that went quote unquote viral in some small sense was an article I wrote on the theory of general relativity. So I wrote about physics a lot back then. And this article went semi viral within our university in my second year of
Mhm.
college. And that just gave me so much boost, because until then, I don't think like even 1 or 2 people read what I wrote. I was just doing it for myself. And at some point, I realized, I'm actually now I'm helping other people. So that gives you enough motivation to keep going for another, 10 articles. And then you get another article where you get a lot of feedback from people. And people keep telling you things like, you taught me something. You have a great writing style. Um, and yeah, so on and so forth after that. But to answer your question on why community building or why, building a company, I think all of those things happened along the way of writing. Like it almost feels like you have your own plans and then the universe has its own plans for you. And most of the times they don't really match. They're like, you think you're going to go this way, but then slowly you keep getting nudged towards this other goal. And at some point you realize, actually, this new goal makes a lot of sense. And so that's how the Unshackled community feels like. It wasn't something I planned to do at all.
There was a very important point in what you said is that you used to write, but when you started getting external validation, that is what motivates people. So maybe it's a takeaway for readers and listeners that you should seek external validation because many a times it would not come automatically.
I want to make a clarification there because I realized it's almost like a bell curve where, um, let's say that the y-axis is external validation and x-axis is like your motivation. Or actually, forget the x-axis. Let's just talk about the y-axis. In the beginning, you write just for yourself, or I wrote just for myself. I wasn't looking for external validation. I just really enjoyed writing about physics and astronomy. And then at some point, I started getting external validation. So you get a lot of it, a lot of it, a lot of it. Um, and that keeps you going enough for you to get to a point where even that is not necessary anymore. And now you're like back to square one, but with a lot more skill than before because you spent the last 10 years writing. Because right now, I would say that even if nobody reads the next 10 articles I publish, I would still write anyway because it gives me a lot of happiness.
That's a very big boost. I mean, what you just said is a motivation factor for me and Amit also. We can also get motivated the same way. We are in the beginning of what you started way back. So, right, Amit?
It's
Yes,
only going to be a matter of time. Yeah.
I think that's very true. And personally, I also feel while you may seek feedback and you may seek opinions from your peers or friends and family, but at the end of the day, what matters most is satisfaction, right? That okay, I had something to express, I expressed, and you're not suppressing what you wanted to express, right? So go ahead out there, uh, say what you want to say, write what you want to write, speak what you want to speak, but do that and don't keep it to yourself. Don't judge yourself and don't look at others for that validation because there are times when I go on to LinkedIn and I post something and I don't really care about what people are going to think about it because that was in my mind. Maybe after a few minutes, I'll go back and delete it. I had to express it. I expressed it. And then I say, okay, I'm going to take it off because, okay, it may be too offensive. But I still feel relieved that I was able to go out and just express that opinion in one way. So I feel personally, you shouldn't really judge yourself too much. And going viral is not the end goal here, right? It is about making sure that you're not suppressing your thoughts because that's where problems will start.
It's kind of unshackling your mind.
We're going to use this very hard. um,
Yeah.
Interestingly, what you just said, you talked about social media, and I just realized something once again. You guys are helping me like unlock certain things in my mind thanks to your questions and thoughts. Um, there's the way I think about my LinkedIn versus Instagram is different. I have been posting consistently for probably a year and a half almost right now. That at this point, I think in habits and not goals.
Right.
Meaning, the habit I have is I sit down every week for a few hours. Deb, my social media manager, helps me in curating topics and doing some preliminary research. And I write posts for the entire week and we publish every single day. Like, I don't think maybe we missed one day here and there, but we've never really missed like, a few days in a row for the last 8, 9 months. And I don't even care about the response as much as in terms of like likes and comments.
Mhm.
It's obviously amazing when people reshare and like and comment. But if a post doesn't do as well, I don't even let it bother me. I just like kind of move on because I'm like, well, the habit is to write. So,
Right.
yes. But with Instagram, because I'm still very early on in there, it's only been 3 months since I started being more active over there. I realize it actually, like, I care more about the reaction I get there, the feedback I get, than on LinkedIn. And I'm seeing this like same, you know, chart of in Instagram, I'm still in that phase of needing external validation.
Mhm.
But with LinkedIn, I've kind of passed that phase right now.
And
Just
I feel that's also because the two platforms, while you can do the same thing on LinkedIn, but Instagram is more multimedia, focused, right? So videos and images, whereas LinkedIn is more about the copy. So on Insta, it is people are reacting to what they see, and then they read the caption later, right? Or they'll react to what they hear, and they don't even read the caption on Insta. But on LinkedIn, they're going to actually read that messaging. So the output there, and the time to react is very different. And Insta is also pretty much instant in that sense, right? On LinkedIn, I think your content will stay around, linger for a couple of days and even weeks. So I think that also plays a lot of impact
possibly.
in how you see those results.
Whatever mind also, when they are on Insta, they're in a different frame of mind, and when they're on LinkedIn, they're in a different frame.
Yeah. And, the funny thing is, like, a few posts have gone viral on Instagram in the last few months. And I feel like the same thing happened with LinkedIn. Because I do think if you publish consistently enough, eventually the algorithm will push something
Correct.
into virality. And so with LinkedIn, it happened like September, October of 2022. That was the first few months when it started doing that. Um, Instagram, I'm still very new to watching things go viral. So there's this expectations that I have on Instagram for, oh, I hope this next one does. And I realize now that I think so differently about LinkedIn and Instagram that with LinkedIn, I feel much more mature, detached, and grounded, that I don't feel that way. And it's a good kind of takeaway for me to maybe think about like, how can I push myself to feel more of the same way with Instagram and in general about social media, any new ones that I ventured into as well.
Sandhya, speaking about Instagram, that reminds me about students and universities.
Mm.
And you've got an upcoming tour, and you're going to be going around universities in America, and helping students. Do you want to share a little bit about what you plan to do and what's the agenda of that tour?
Yes, absolutely. Once again, this was a mere idea a few months ago. I was having lunch with my professor, Chuck Garcia from Columbia University back in November 2023. And he mentioned over lunch, have you thought about doing a tour? I mean, have you thought about coming to Columbia and speaking about Unshackled? I had thought about it. I mean, I always thought maybe we could do some sort of a speaking tour for Unshackled. But for many reasons, it didn't make sense to me. But then the same day that Chuck told me this, I got an email from somebody at Mob Squad, who eventually became our title sponsor for the book tour,
Mhm.
saying that, hey, if you're thinking of hosting like a book launch for Unshackled in New York, we'd love to be a potential sponsor for it. And it just felt like, okay, the universe is trying to tell me something right now.
Yeah.
How is it that the same within a few hours from each other, two people tell me similar things? Then I began thinking about it more, talking to Rajesh, other people, and I decided that I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a book tour sometime March or April 2024. I don't know how I'm gonna get sponsors or where I'm gonna go speak. No idea. Um, so that was the inception of the book tour. So now it is confirmed that we will be visiting, uh, in a sense, 13 universities, but we'll be actually addressing students from 15 universities because we're combining some events together. 15 universities, hopefully reaching over 3,000 students in person. And we will be visiting 4 different cities: San Francisco, Bay Area, New York City, Boston, and in Texas, a few different cities for different, because Texas is just so huge. And this is happening in April. It is an entirely free event for students. no one has to pay anything. In fact, we're going to be bringing benefits worth like $6,000 to all these universities because we're going to get lawyers on these tours who can actually talk to students and address any questions students have. Usually, to get in front of a lawyer and get their time it costs money, hundreds of dollars.
Correct.
But these are lawyers with decades of experience coming there, experts on visas. And so I really hope that anyone who's listening to this, who's a student or who knows somebody who is, comes, attends these events because we want this to be kind of the inflection point for somebody's immigration career. Like a student who walks into this event and walks out, they should never look at immigration the same way again. And they should be like 100% far ahead from someone who didn't attend the event, who didn't know about talent visas or O1s or how to build a startup on a visa and so on.
That's excellent, Sundari. I wish you all the best for that tour. In fact, just yesterday we were speaking to this young student. I must mention him because I did promise him that I'm going to talk about him a little bit. His name is Rohan Pradyumna. He just completed his master's and now he's actually gone ahead and up a startup called Travana. Travana.io is his website. And he was able to stop his OPT clock on the basis of his startup. And I was very surprised when I heard that. And I was like, wow, you've managed to come up with something, again, extraordinary in a way, because not a lot of students, because I see a lot of students reaching out to me every other day saying, hey, I'm on this OPT clock. I just have 90 days and I have to, find something very quickly. And here I meet Rohan, who has gone ahead and he's taken control of his life. He's gone ahead and, set up something uh, beautiful. And in fact, I would recommend you to go and see his website. I think one of the best user experiences that I've actually seen on a website. And so those are the kind of students which I feel inspired from, right? Because they're not out there complaining, going on these marches and saying, that the American dream is broken. No, they're actually going and building their dream by themselves. So I feel proud of their achievements. And I think what you're going to do in this tour is also going to inspire many more Rohans in the future.
So beautifully said. Absolutely. I think the tour is meant to create more Rohans, people who are proactive, who are informed, and who take matters into their own hands, and they're
Correct.
not waiting for things to happen to them. So, yeah, that's the end goal of this tour, honestly.
Yeah, I think you should call it the empowered tour, right? You're not the unshackled and empowered is what I would say is really the mantra of that tour. So wish you all the best for that.
Yeah, and on that, I just wanted to mention today, you know, my best friend who's going to accompany me on the tour and be the MC and moderator, he and I were talking about what do we want people to feel when they walk away, right? And the few words we came up with were empowered, optimistic, and informed.
Correct.
So you captured it very well.
That's great. Sundari, you have a lot of gigs going on at the same time. You're writing books. You're active on social. You're building a community. You're also investing in companies. There's rock climbing on your list of things. You just mentioned about the 6K, 5K that you run every day. So how do you manage your time and your schedule? So what's a typical day in your life?
I'm almost tempted to say there is no typical day, but the more accurate answer is the typical day changes every few months or weeks sometimes. Because just last week, this time, I was in India. I was in Bangalore. I was working in the office in person with my two full time employees from India
Correct.
who work with me on community and sales. And there, my schedule was something on the lines of waking up at 7, having calls in the morning as soon as I wake up because, US times. So
Right.
you have to accommodate. And then going to the office, working with in person with my employees the entire day. Like I split my days into on the mornings I would do book tour stuff and sponsorship and partnership stuff, and then afternoon and evening I would do either deep work or working on community. and then ending my day at like 8 or 9 p.m., hopefully meeting a friend for dinner and then going to sleep. It was a very like simple day in that sense. Right now, it's a little different, I would say. Since I'm in San Francisco and I began this challenge, 5K challenge with myself, the last at least 5 days, I've been waking up at 6 a.m. every day, going on either a very long walk or a run, getting ready by 7:30 a.m., having a call with my team in India at 8 a.m. for a check-in, and then getting to the office, spending the first few hours on still sponsorships and partnership stuff, because that's very important. And if I don't do it as the first thing in the day, I procrastinate on that. So I
Correct.
kind of force myself to do the hardest thing first thing in the day.
Mhm.
Uh, and then spending kind of post afternoon working on so much marketing, promotion, and operations for the book tour. Like, I did a book launch event last year in SF for Unshackled. I thought that was hard. Now I'm doing that in 15 locations, and it is just insane the kind of work that's going in. And like, there's just so many issues that come up every single day.
Right.
Uh, But I try to finish everything by 7 p.m. In fact, this is the last thing I'm going to do for today. And I tell myself, I'm forcing myself to get human connection after 7 p.m. Like, go meet a friend, spend time with roommates, call a friend, like any people time from 7 to 9, and then going to sleep by 9:30.
Yeah. That's good. I think you still tick off the human connection because both Rahul and me are human. We're not AI bot. So yeah, I think you're doing well on that.
Are you sure? Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Sandhya. I have a final few rapid fire questions. Hopefully, you'll find them
So,
interesting and tough. So let me start with the first one, and Rahul, you go up with the next one. So, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
no.
No.
Wait, should I say
If
more?
there's a
Should I
more,
just say no? No, that's right.
No, it's good.
okay, yeah,
No, it's
go.
good.
Okay.
Unless you have a strong opinion on why no.
Actually, no, because I don't like pizza at all in the first place. So,
Okay. So, okay, so that question itself is disqualified.
If there's a movie on your life, four would you like to play Soundarya?
oh my God.
Don't say Soundarya.
I doubt there'll ever be one. But if there ever was one, who was an actress I've admired? Um, well, I loved Arya from Game of Thrones because her name also is part of my name, Soundarya, and I really just admire her resilient spirit. So maybe her. I've never thought about this.
Okay, cool. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently?
Oh, totally depends on which year and which moment in time. If I could go back in time to like 17 before I started college, then I would have definitely chosen a different major or maybe even skipped college. Who knows?
First app you check every morning.
Lately, it's Spotify because when I go on a walk or run, I listen to certain playlists.
Any quirky rituals that most people don't know?
Quirky rituals. Okay, quirky rituals. Okay, this is a little bit quirky, but um generally, when I leave my house to go to the office and walk, so I wear sunglasses, a lot in general. And when I wear the sunglasses, though, I like to listen to a certain song that makes me feel badass. And so that song is "Swimming Pool" by Kendrick Lamar. And I, yeah, yeah, that's a ritual. I would.
I don't know if I'm going to get the rights for that song to insert into this video, but we'll figure out. So much, Soundarya. It's been such a pleasure having you and hosting you on the Indian Community Podcast. I feel your journey and all the insights that you shared with us today, they're inspiring and also a beacon of hope. And for a lot of immigrants, we thank you for the time, the wisdom, and the impactful work that you continue to do. We're cheering for you from the side. So I think we're really glad to see all the achievements that you've already reached and you'll continue to reach. So thank you once again for being part of our show and sharing your extraordinary story.
Thank you. And I just have to
Thank you.
say that you guys did such a great job curating the questions for the show and engaging with the responses. I had a blast being on the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And
Thank
Sundari, when you think of the Indian community, right? So you work with a lot of immigrants. I'm assuming a lot of them are Indians also. Any message that you would like to leave behind for all our listeners? And predominantly they're all Indian immigrants living somewhere or the other. So any last message that you would want to leave us with?
Oh gosh. With respect to immigration, the message is that there are more options than you'd think, and you just have to change your perspective with life. I think I really encourage people to take more risks. I think we are generally risk averse as humans. And especially for someone who is early on in their life and doesn't have a lot of dependencies, I think that they should take more risks. So that's my message.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sundari. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.